What's up everyone, and welcome to this week's Cybersecurity Weekly, where we review the security events that happened in the last week. As always, I've broken them down in the timeline so you can jump around as you see fit. If you find my work valuable, of course I ask you to hit the like button, and if you have not already, subscribe to my channel.
Oh, drat these computers. They're so naughty and so complex. I could pinch them.
We start off today with phishing. The Computer Emergency Response Team of the Ukraine, known as CERT-UA, warns of phishing attacks aimed at organizations in the country using the topic Azovstal. The phishing messages use the subject Azovstal and a weaponized Office document. Upon opening the attachment and enabling the macro, it will start the infection process. The malicious code will download, create on disk, and run the malicious DLL pe.dll. The last stage, malware installed on the infected systems, is a Cobalt Strike beacon that allows attackers to take over the entire machine. The analysis of encryption techniques employed in the attack allowed the government experts to associate the campaign with the cybercrime group TrickBot. You might remember since February, the notorious cybercrime operation TrickBot is now controlled by Conti Ransomware, the ransomware gang that publicly announced its support to Russia after the invasion of the Ukraine by Russian cyber militaries. Russia-linked Gamaredon APT Group, aka Armageddon, aka Primitive Bear, aka Actinum, continues to target Ukraine, and it is using new variants of the custom Pterado backdoor, aka Pteranodon. The cyber espionage group is behind a recent series of spear phishing attacks targeting Ukrainian entities and organizations related to Ukrainian affairs. Since October 2021, according to Microsoft, Gamaredon has been launching cyber espionage campaigns against Ukraine since at least 2014. Researchers from Symantec revealed that the app group is using at least 4 variants of the custom Pterado backdoor in recent attacks. Pteranodon is a multi-stage backdoor designed to collect sensitive information or maintain access to compromised machines. It is distributed through spear phishing messages with weaponized Office documents that appear to be designed to lure targets. Recent attacks attributed to Gamaredon were characterized by the deployment of multiple malware payloads on the targeted systems. The payloads delivered by the threat actors are usually different variants of the backdoor Pterado that have been designed to perform similar tasks. The researchers pointed out that each variant will communicate with a different command and control server. Now, if you recall some of my episodes in the past, I've said that they're going to start splintering and modularizing and having different versions of these types of software out there so that it helps them from basically getting taken down. The most likely reason for this multiple variants is that it may provide a rudimentary way of maintaining persistence on an affected computer. If one payload or command and control server is detected and blocked, the attackers can fall back on another of the others, or on one of the others, and roll out more new variants to compensate, reads the analysis published by Symantec, which is basically saying what I just said. The attackers are using multiple different payloads to establish persistence on these infected systems and to be resilient to takedown operations conducted by security firms and government experts. The Pterado variant employed in the attacks is a modified, self-extracting archive which contains obfuscated VB scripts that act as a dropper. The backdoor achieves persistence by adding a scheduled task before downloading additional payloads from a command and control server. Below are the 4 variants of the Gamaredon's backdoor analyzed by the experts. There's backdoor.pterado.b. This variant is a modified self-extracting archive containing obfuscated VB scripts in resources that can be unpacked by 7-zip. There's backdoor.pterado.c. This variant, also designed to drop VB scripts on the infected computer. When it runs, it'll first engage in API hammering, making multiple meaningless API calls, which is presumably an attempt to avoid sandbox detection. Then there's backdoor.pterado.d, which is another VB script dropper. Then there's pterado.e, which is the final variant, and its functionality is very similar to both variants B and C, engaging in API hammering before extracting 2 VB script files to the user's home directory. Script obfuscation is very similar to other variants. Now, the nation-state hackers also used other tools such as the Ultra VNC Remote Administration Remote Desktop Software Utility, and Gamaredon apt was also observed using the popular Microsoft SysInternals Process Explorer tool. Cybercriminals are leveraging advanced tactics in their phishing kits, granting them high delivery success rate of spoofed emails, which contain malicious attachments right before the end of the 2021 IRS income tax return deadline in the US, which was April 18th, 2022. There was a notable campaign detected which leveraged phishing emails impersonating the IRS, and in particular, one of the industry vendors who provide solutions to government agencies, which include the emailing, digital communications management, and the content delivery system, which inform citizens about various updates. Cybercriminals personally choose specific times when all of us are busy with taxes or preparing for holidays like Easter and Christmas. That's why you need to be especially careful during these times. The IT services vendor actors impersonated is widely used by major federal agencies, including DHS and other such websites of states and cities in the United States. They identified phishing emails, warned the victims about overdue payments to the IRS, which should then be paid via PayPal. The email contained an HTML attachment imitating an electronic invoice. Notably, the email doesn't contain any URLs and has been successfully delivered to the victim's inbox without getting flagged as potential spam. Based on the inspected headers, the email has been sent through multiple hops, leveraging primarily network hosts and domains registered in the US. It's worth noting on the date of detection, none of the involved hosts have previously been blacklisted, nor have any had signs of negative IP or abnormal domain reputation. Now, the HTML attachment with the fake IRS invoice contains JS-based obfuscated code. Further analysis uncovered embedded scenarios detecting the victim's IP using GO2 IP modules deployed on a third-party website, likely done to selectively choose targets or to filter by region. After the user opens this HTML attachment, the phishing script will encourage the user to enter his credentials. This is done by leveraging an interactive form to impersonate the Office 365 authorization mechanism. Once the user enters their credentials, the phishing kit automatically attempts to check access to the victim's email account via IMAP protocol. Based on the de-obfuscated JS content, the actors were leveraging supportmicrohere.com domain. Likely the threat actors attempted to impersonate Microsoft technical support and trick users by using the domain with similar spelling. The script intercepts entered credentials and passes them via post request. The HTTP post transmits login and passwords to scripts deployed on jdellmarket.com. The phishing email also had a return path field defined as another email controlled by the attackers, which collects information about unsuccessfully delivered emails. The return path is used to process bounces from emails, and it defines how and where bounced emails will be processed. We now move on to patches. Taiwanese vendor QNAP warns users to update their NAS firmware to address Apache HTTP vulnerabilities tracked to CVE 2022-22721 and CVE 2022-23943 addressed in the Apache HTTP server in March. While CVE 2022-22719 and CVE 2022-22720, which are also related to Apache, do not affect QNAP products, the CVE 2022-22721 affects 32-bit QNAP NAS models, and the CVE 2022-23943 affects users who have enabled mod_SED in Apache HTTP server on their QNAP device, reads the advisory published by the vendor. The flaws are a possible buffer overflow in limit XML request body and an out-of-bounds write vulnerability in mod_sed of Apache HTTP. Both vulnerabilities received a CVSS severity score of 9.8 out of 10 and affect Apache HTTP server versions 2.4.52 and earlier. Apache Foundation addressed the issue in March 2022 with the release of version 2.4.53, of course. The descriptions for both the issues reported in the changelog are as follows. So, CVE 2022-22721, as we said, was a possible buffer overflow with larger or unlimited limit XML request body. That's the definition according to CVEMiter.org. Now, if limit XML request body is set to allow request bodies larger than 350 megabytes, where the default is actually only 1 megabyte, on a 32-bit system, an integer overflow happens, which later causes out-of-bounds writes. Now, this issue affects Apache HTTP version, as I mentioned, 2.4.52 and earlier, and the credit to finding this goes to some anonymous person working at Trend Micro's Zero-Day Initiative. Then we have CVE 2022-23943, which is the read-write beyond bounds, according to the definition of CVEMiter.org. Now, out-of-bounds write vulnerability in mod_sed of Apache HTTP server. It allows an attacker to overwrite heap memory with possibly attacker-provided data. This issue, again, affects Apache's version 2.4, version 2.4.52, and earlier, and it was found by Ronald Crane of Zip and Hope, or Zip and Hop LLC. We now move on to attacks, vulnerabilities, and updates. GitHub uncovered threat actors using stolen OAuth user tokens to gain access to their repositories and download private data from several organizations. Threat actors abused stolen OAuth user tokens issued to two third-party OAuth integrators, there's Heroku and Travis CI, to download data from dozens of organizations, including NPM. GitHub excludes that the attacker obtained these tokens via a compromise of GitHub or its systems. They say it has to be Heroku and Travis because the company explained that the stolen tokens used to access the repositories are not stored by GitHub in their original usable formats. So GitHub doesn't even have these tokens in that format that they were used, or usable format. On April 12th, the company launched an investigation into a series of unauthorized access to data stored in repositories of dozens of organizations. The experts first detected the intrusion on April 12th, when the company's own security team identified unauthorized access to their NPM production infrastructure using a compromised AWS API key. The threat actors allegedly obtained the AWS API key by downloading a set of unspecified private NPM repositories using the stolen OAuth token from one of the two affected OAuth applications, again, Heroku and Travis CI. GitHub revoked the access tokens associated with the affected apps. Threat actors may be harvesting sensitive data from private repositories using these stolen OAuth tokens. Known affected OAuth applications as of April 15th include Heroku Dashboard 1459009, 628778, the preview version 313468, and the classic version 363831, as well as Travis CI 9216. The Microsoft-owned firm, which is GitHub, is still investigating the compromise, notifying affected organizations. Researchers from Fortinet discovered a new DDoS botnet tracked as Enemybot that has targeted several routers and web servers by exploiting known vulnerabilities. The botnet targets multiple architectures including ARM, BSD, x64, and x86. The researchers attribute the botnet to the cybercrime group KEXEC, which focuses on DDoS-based extortion. Upon installing the threat, the bot drops a file in /temp/.pond containing a message that attributes itself to KEXEC, so they're outing themselves. The message was stored as clear text in earlier samples. New samples were released with message encoded with a XOR operation using a multiple byte key. Experts pointed out that the malware is being actively developed. The Enemybot botnet borrows the code from Gafgite bot and reused some codes from the infamous Mirai botnet. Gafgite is a popular choice for launching large-scale DDoS attacks. It first appeared in the threat landscape in 2014. It uses several methods of obfuscation for its strings to hinder analysis and hide itself from other bots. Furthermore, it connects to a command and control server that is hidden in the Tor network, making its takedown more complicated, reads the analysis published by Fortinet. Enemybot has been seen targeting routers from CO1 Intec D-Link and exploits a recently reported IRZ router vulnerability to infect more devices. The botnet implements multiple obfuscation techniques to avoid detection and hide C2 on the Tor network. The Enemybot botnet employs several methods to spread and targets other IoT devices. It uses a list of hard-coded username password combinations to log into devices in the attempt to access systems using weak or default credentials. The bot also tries to run shell commands to infect misconfigured Android devices that expose Android debug bridge port 5555. The malware exploits tens of known vulnerabilities, including, I'm not going to read the CVEs, but I'd say the name of the company or the manufacturer, the CO1 Intec SLC 130 and SLR 120S routers, D-Link routers, DWR 116, and a whole bunch of them, IRZ mobile routers, Total Link routers, exploiting the beast mode botnet. Then there's Fortinet PSIRT, there's Apache HTTP servers, there's Stink PHP CMS, Zyxel P660HN routers, Netgear routers, D-Link routers, Zone routers, and Netgear DGN 1000 exploit targets the Netgear routers. Once exploited, once one of the above flaws are exploited, the bot runs a shell command to download a shell script from a URL that is dynamically updated by the command and control server using the command ld server. Then, the script downloads the actual Enemybot binary, which is compiled for the target device's architecture. Now, in case the download server is down, the botnet operators can update the bot clients with a new URL. Once the bot has been installed on a device, it connects to its command and control server and waits for further commands. Malware Hunter Team and Bleeping Computer reported the birth of a new marketplace called Industrial Spy that sells stolen data and offers free stolen data to its members. Malware Hunter Team researchers spotted malware samples that were dropping a wallpaper that promoted this site. Upon executing the malware that they found, it creates a readme.txt file in every folder on the machine. The content of the files includes a description of the service and a link to the Tor site. The description of the service or the message within that readme.txt file goes something like this. All these misspellings were there. This isn't me making this up. So there you can buy or download for free private and compromising data of your competitors. We public schemes, drawings, technologies, political and military secrets, accounting reports, and clients' databases. All these things were gathered from the largest worldwide companies, conglomerate, and concerns with every activity. We gather data using vulnerability in their IT infrastructure. In their IT infrastructure, again, Industrial Spy Team processes huge masses every day to divide you results. You could fit it in their portal. The message goes on to say, Tor browser required. We could save your time gaining your own goals or goals of your company. With our information, you could refuse partnership with unscrupulous partner, reveal dirty secrets of your competitors and enemies, and earn millions of dollars using insider information. And then quotes, he owns information, owns the world, Nathan Meyer Rothschild. The experts notice that the wallpaper includes typos and mistakes, and the whole text is repeated, which is strange for professional threat actors. Industrial Spy is a marketplace that offers businesses data on their competitors, including intellectual property and trade secrets. The marketplace has different levels of data offerings, from $2 for individual files up to premium stolen data related, which represents all data stolen from an organization, and that could be proposed for millions of dollars. Some data dumps are available on Industrial Spy for free. They were likely downloaded from the leak sites of ransomware gangs or other hacking forums. Bleeping Computer added that the executables discovered by Malware Hunter Team are being distributed through other malware downloaders, including Cracks and Adware. The group is also operating Twitter and Telegram accounts to share info about the availability of new datasets. The decentralized credit-based financial system Beanstalk suffered a security breach that resulted in financial losses of $182 million. Researchers at blockchain analysis firm PeckShield reported that the attackers had stolen $80 million for the hacker himself. PeckShield first reported the suspicious activity to Beanstalk team via Twitter on Sunday. The security breach was caused by two shady governance proposals, BIP 18 and BIP 19, along with a flash loan attack. The attacker made a proposal in the suspicious transaction. The malicious contract will be executed when the proposed proposal passes, smart contract auditor Blocksec explained. The problem for the protocol was seeded by suspicious governance proposals BIP 18 and BIP 19, which were issued on Saturday by the exploiter or the attacker, who asked for the protocol so that funds could be donated to the Ukraine, reported Cointelegraph. However, those two proposals, again, BIP 18 and BIP 19, had a malicious rider attached to them that ultimately created a sinkhole of funds from the protocol itself, according to smart contract auditor Blocksec. Researchers at Smart Contract Auditors and developers at Omnitia, who analyzed the attack, explained that the attackers conducted a flash loan attack on the Beanstalk protocol. The hackers exploited a vulnerability in its newly introduced Curve LP silos to compromise the protocol's governance mechanism and conduct an emergency execution of a malicious proposal to steal the funds. A flash loan attack takes place when the hackers loan funds from a DeFi platform and then bypass the loan mechanism to steal funds using exploits. PeckShield researchers explained that attackers deposited most of the stolen funds to the mixing service. They also transferred 250,000 US dollar coins to the Ukraine crypto donation wallet. The platform is still investigating the security breach. It also invited the thieves to negotiate to return the stolen funds, according to Cointelegraph project spokesperson Publius on April 17th, who wrote that the project is likely lost, meaning Beanstalk is just done, since there's no venture capital backing it to cover the losses. DeFi platforms are becoming a privileged target of threat actors. In February, attackers have stolen $325 million in cryptocurrency, leveraging a bug in the Wormhole Communications bridge. While in August 2021, attackers stole $611 million from the cross-chain protocol Poly network. Cybersecurity researchers from Palo Alto Networks disclosed a new version of the SolarMarker malware that implements new features to avoid detection. SolarMarker, aka Jupiter, aka Pulsar, aka Yellow Cockatoo, is a fileless .NET rat that implements backdoor capabilities and allows operators to steal credentials from web browsers. It gains persistence by adding itself to the startup folder and modifying shortcuts on the victim's desktop. The rat is also used to deliver other malicious payloads on the infected devices. SolarMarker is mainly delivered through search engine optimization manipulation to trick users into downloading malicious documents. The recent version analyzed by the researchers also works with Windows installer package files along with Windows portable executables. The initial stage for the deployment of the malware is an exe file larger than 250 megabytes. The file is that large to avoid an automated sandbox or antivirus analysis. The sample analyzed by the experts was compiled in February 2022, a circumstance that suggests the artifacts are part of new development. This file drops and executes an installer of a legitimate program to avoid raising suspicion. At the same time, it runs a PowerShell loader in a new thread to load and execute the SolarMarker backdoor payload. The SolarMarker backdoor communicates with the command and control server through the encrypted channel. The malware used HTTP post requests and encrypts data using RSA encryption with advanced encryption standard symmetric encryption. The core model leverages a specific SolarMarker's information stealing module to harvest autofill data, cookies, passwords, and credit card information from web browsers. Unlike previous variants, the latest one, the dropper files are always signed with certificates issued by a legitimate company. The new version modified the PowerShell loader script, and unlike previous ones, in the first execution of the malware, the backdoor will load into the dropper process and not into the PowerShell process. Researchers from Citizen Lab have published a report detailing the use of a new zero-click iMessage exploit dubbed Homage to install the NSO Group Pegasus spyware on iPhones belonging to Catalan politicians, journalists, academics, and activists. The previously undocumented zero-click iMessage exploit Homage works in attacks against iOS versions below 13.2. The experts speculate the Homage exploit was used going back as far as the late months of 2019 and involved an iMessage zero-click component that launched a WebKit instance in the com.apple.mediastream.mstreamd process, following a com.apple.private.alloy.photostream lookup for a Pegasus email address. The experts at the Citizen Lab, in collaboration with Catalan civil society groups, have identified at least 65 individuals targeted or infected with spyware. 63 of them were targeted or infected with the Pegasus spyware, and 4 others with the spyware developed by another surveillance firm named Candiru. You might remember this name from one of my previous episodes where I said there were other companies that developed similar software to Pegasus. Now, the researchers reported that at least 2 of these people, of the 65, were targeted or infected with both surveillance software, so they had Pegasus and the one from Candiru. Victims included members of the European Parliament, Catalan presidents, legislators, jurists, and members of civil society organizations. The threat actors also targeted family members of those people. The researchers also noticed that the content used in the bait SMS messages suggests access to targets' personal information, including the Spanish governmental ID numbers. This isn't the first time that Catalans were targeted by the NSO Group Pegasus spyware. Citizen Lab has previously reported possible cases of domestic political espionage after detecting infections with the popular surveillance software. Multiple Catalans were targeted with Pegasus through the 2019 WhatsApp attack, At the time, the spyware leveraged exploits for the CVE 2019-3568 vulnerability. Now, Citizen Lab doesn't explicitly attribute the attacks to a specific threat actor, but the nature of the targets suggests a link with the Spanish authorities themselves. All the targets were of interest to the Spanish government, and experts pointed out that the specific timing of the targeting matches events of specific interest to the Spanish government. Researchers from Kaspersky discovered a vulnerability in the encryption process of the Yanluowang ransomware that can be exploited to recover the files encrypted by the malware without paying the ransom. The Yanluowang ransomware was first spotted by researchers from Symantec Threat Hunter team in October 2021. The malware was used in highly targeted attacks against large enterprises. The discovery is part of an investigation into an attempted ransomware attack against a large organization. Kaspersky implemented the decrypting process for the Yanluowang ransomware into its Rano decryptor tool. In order to decrypt their files, victims of this family of ransomware should have at least one original file. The Yanluowang ransomware uses different encryption routines depending on the size of the files. Files greater than 3 GB using a partially encrypted encryption model that uses stripes, so every 5 megabytes after every 200 megabytes of the file, while files smaller than 3 GB are completely encrypted from beginning to end. For this reason, to decrypt files, the following conditions must be met. So to decrypt small files, which are, again, less than 3 GB, users need a pair of files with a size of at least 1024 bytes. This is enough to decrypt all other small files less than 3 GB. Now, to decrypt big files of more than 3 GB, users need a pair of files encrypted and original, no less than 3 GB in size each. This will be enough to decrypt both big and small files. The Symantec researchers noticed the use of the legitimate add-find command line Active Directory query tool that is often abused by ransomware operators as a recon tool. Before being deployed on compromised devices, the attackers launch a malicious tool designed to prepare the environment with the following actions. It creates a text file with a number of remote machines to check in the command line. It uses Windows management instrumentation to get a list of processes running on remote machines into a txt file, and it logs all the processes and remote machine names to processes.txt. Now, the analysis of the samples collected by experts revealed that the Yanluowang ransomware uses the Windows API for its encryption. Upon deploying the Yanluowang ransomware, it will stop hypervisor virtual machines. It'll end all processes logged by the above tools or the scripts, including SQL and backup solutions Veeam. Then it will encrypt the files. The ransomware appends the .yanluowang extension to the file names of the encrypted files. Lenovo has published a security advisory to warn customers of vulnerabilities that affect its Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, or UEFI, loaded on at least 100 of its notebooks models. That's 100 different models, including IdeaPad 3, Legion 5 Pro 16ACH6H, and Yoga Slim 914i TL05 or 05. Now, the following vulnerabilities were reported in Lenovo Notebook BIOS, reads the advisory published by Lenovo. The CVE 2021-3970, which is a potential vulnerability in Lenovo Variable SMI Handler due to insufficient validation in some Lenovo notebook models, may allow an attacker with local access and elevated privileges to execute arbitrary code. Then there's CVE 2021-3971, a potential vulnerability by a driver used during older manufacturing processes on some consumer Lenovo notebook devices that was mistakenly included in the BIOS image, could allow an attacker with elevated privileges to modify firmware protection region by modifying an NVRAM variable. Finally, the CVE 2021-3972, a potential vulnerability to a driver used during manufacturing process on some consumer Lenovo notebook devices that was mistakenly not deactivated, may allow an attacker with elevated privileges to modify secure boot settings by modifying an NVRAM variable. The three flaws were reported by ESET researchers to Lenovo in October. Two vulnerabilities tracked as CVE 2021-3971 and CVE 2021-3972 can be exploited by an attacker to disable the protection for the SPI flash memory chip and turn off the UEFI secure boot feature. The Secure Boot is a security standard developed by members of PC industry to ensure that a device boots using only software that is trusted by the original equipment manufacturer, or OEM. The third vulnerability, tracked to CVE 2021-3970, can be exploited by a local attacker to execute arbitrary code with elevated privileges. The vulnerabilities affecting the Lenovo UEFI result from the use of two UEFI firmware drivers, and wait to hear these names, named Secure Backdoor and Secure Backdoor PEIM, respectively. Both drivers are used only during the manufacturing process. Any driver or any piece of software with the name backdoor in it has nothing to do in a BIOS. The researchers pointed out that UEFI vulnerabilities are very insidious because they could be exploited by threat actors to deploy stealthy implants that are able to bypass security protections that operate at the operating system level. Taiwanese vendor QNAP urges customers to disable UPnP, or Universal Plug-and-Play, port forwarding on their routers to protect their network-attached storage devices from attacks. UPnP is an insecure protocol. It uses network UDP multicast and doesn't support encryption and authentication. Universal Plug-and-Play, or UPnP, is a set of networking protocols that allows network devices to seamlessly discover each other's presence on the network and establish functional network services. UPnP port forwarding allows network devices to communicate with each other more efficiently and to automatically create workgroups for data sharing among other applications. Threat actors can abuse UPnP to infect a system and take it over. UPnP may expose user devices to public networks and malicious attacks. It is recommended that your QNAP NAS stay behind your router and firewall without a public IP address. You should disable manual port forwarding and UPnP auto port forwarding for QNAP NAS in your router configuration, reads the advisory published by QNAP. The MyQNAP cloud linked service provided by QNAP is a good way for most users to access the QNAP NAS. The transmission speed may be slightly slower because the traffic is relayed through QNAP servers, but that shouldn't be a big nuisance. The vendor also recommends enabling the VPN server function on the user router to access QNAP NAS from the internet. Users can also remotely connect their devices by enabling the VPN server on QNAP NAS by installing the QVPN service app or deploying QU1 SD-WAN solution. The vendor also warned customers in January to secure their NAS devices immediately from active ransomware and brute force attacks. Now, this next list is going to be long and it's off screen, but you gotta bear with me. I'll read it as slow as I can. Users that have to access their NAS devices directly from the internet are recommended to perform the following actions. Put your QNAP NAS behind your router and firewall. Do not let your QNAP NAS obtain a public IP address. Turn off UPnP or QNAP NAS, or on your QNAP NAS. Manually set up port forwarding in your router configuration only for the network ports required by the QNAP NAS services you use. You want to disable any service that you're not using, such as Telnet, SSH, web server, SQL Server, PHP, PostgreSQL, and blah, blah, blah. You want to change default external internet side port numbers, such as 21, 22, 80, 443, 8080, and 8081, so to custom random ones. So, for example, you could change port 8080 to 9527. You only use encrypted HTTPS or other types of secure connections like SSH. You want to install QU Firewall on your QNAP NAS and limit allowed IP addresses to a specific region or subnet. You want to set up a new administrator account and disable the default admin account. You want to enforce a strong password policy for all NAS users, including the new administrator account you just created. You want to configure multi-factor authentication or two-step verification on your QNAP NAS. You want to enable automatic operating system and app updates, and you can schedule updates to avoid interrupting backup, sync, or other tasks. And then you want to enable IP access protection to block IP addresses with too many failed login attempts. The BotenaGo botnet was first spotted in November 2021 by researchers at AT&T. The malicious code leverages 33 exploits to target millions of routers and IoT devices. BotenaGo was written in Golang, and at the time of the report published by the experts, it had a low antivirus detection rate of 6 from 62. The BotenaGo source code is available online since October 2021, allowing multiple threat actors to create their own version by adding new exploits to infect the largest number possible. Researchers at Nozomi Networks Labs have recently discovered a new BotenaGo variant that specifically targets Little security camera DVR devices. The experts called the sample they analyzed Little Scanner because of the name the developers used for it in the source code /root/littlein.go. The bot was likely developed from the leaked source code. According to the experts, the authors removed almost all of the 30 exploits, including the original code of BotenaGo, and reused some parts of the exploit, or parts to exploit an RCE vulnerability affecting Lilin DVR devices. The malware used the infect function Lilin DVR function to receive the IP address to scan. It first attempts to access the device behind the IP. The experts noticed that the Lilin scanner, unlike the BotenaGo malware, contains 11 pairs of user password credentials in its code. The BotenaGo botnet reportedly abused only the couple of credentials root/iCatch99 and report/whatever that password is. When the device uses one of the credentials in the list, the malware exploits the vulnerability to execute arbitrary code. Lilin Scanner will loop over the 11 encoded credentials and will sequentially try to access the root directory, changing the base64 string in the authorization field. Now, when the server response contains the string HTTP 1.1200 or HTTP 1.0200, it'll be considered as an authentication, a successful authentication, and will attempt the exploitation of the network time protocol configuration vulnerability, continues the analysis. This vulnerability, part of a set of security vulnerabilities affecting Lilin DVRs, was discovered in 2020 and was assigned a CVSS version 3.1 score of 10 out of 10, which is critical by the vendor. The scanner can exploit the command injection vulnerability in the web interface of the DVR by sending specially crafted HTTP post requests to the URL path /DVR/CMD and /CN/CMD. If successful, the request modifies the NTTP configuration of the camera. The modified configuration contains a command that attempts to download a file named wget.sh from some IP address, and then it executes its contents. If the command injection to /DVR/command is not successful, the scanner attempts the same attack to the endpoint /CN/CMD. Once the attack is complete, another request to the same endpoint restores the original NTP configuration. In the next stage of the attack, the wget.sh file downloads array payloads compiled for multiple architectures and attempts to execute them on the compromised device. All these samples have been uploaded to VirusTotal at the beginning of March 2022. Experts also noticed that the Murray botnet employed in the attack excludes IP ranges belonging to the internal networks of the U.S. Department of Defense, U.S. Postal Service, General Electric, Hewlett-Packard, and some other brands. Anonymous and groups linked to the infamous collective continue to target Russian organizations. The hacktivists are breaching their systems and leak stolen data on a regular basis. Below are the organizations breached just the last 3 days. Tender Tech is a firm specializing in processing financial and banking documents on behalf of businesses and entrepreneurs. The list of the partner banks of the firms includes TransCapital Bank, Bank Uralsib, Bank Soyuz, RGS Bank, Bank Zenit, and Otkritie Bank. Anonymous claims to have stolen 426,000 emails and leaked an archive of 160 gigabytes in size. Then there's Guav IGS. General Department of Troops and Civil Construction is a construction company that works on projects in the interests of the Russian Ministry of Defense. Guav IGS, that's how I'm saying it, is wholly owned by the Russian Ministry of Defense through JSC Garnizon, formerly Oberonservice, and JSC Guav Ryob, RYOB, the main directorate for the arrangement of troops with 49% and 51% shares, respectively. Anonymous claims to have stolen 15,600 emails and leaked an archive of 9.5 gigabytes in size. Then there is Senesys surveillance system. Anonymous claims to have hacked the Senesys and Kipod surveillance systems. Senesys is under U.S. sanctions due to Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. According to DDoS Secrets, data was gathered in August 2020. That's 2 years ago. It was leaked now in response to the Belarusian government taking control of the system. According to a statement on the company's website, the transition of control of the system will result in the end of the Kipod software. Then comes Neocom Geoservice. It's an engineering firm specializing in exploring oil and gas fields and providing drilling support. Their primary clients include Gazprom, Orenburg Neft, Samot Lornegtgaz, Tjumeneftegaz, and Rossmann International. Anonymous claims to have stolen 87,500 emails and leaked an archive of 107 gigabytes in size. Last, we have Gazregion. It's a construction company specializing in gas pipelines and facilities. Gazregion's clients include Gazprom and has thousands of kilometers of pipelines as part of the Russian Federation's program to transport gas throughout the different regions. 3 different hacktivist sources, Anonymous, NB65, and Porteur, submitted files from Gazregion at approximately the same time with some overlap. The hacktivists leaked a 222 gigabytes in size containing emails, files, and decrypted keys. Snort, a free open source network intrusion detection system and intrusion prevention system, which is currently developed by Cisco. The software performs real-time traffic analysis and packet logging on Internet Protocol networks, protocol analysis, content searching, and matching. The project is also known for its use in attack detection. Eurikatz, a security researcher at Clarity, detailed a flaw in the Modbus preprocessor of the Snort detection engine tracked to CVE 2022-20685 that could trigger a denial of service condition and make the software ineffective against malicious traffic. The CVE 2022-20685 vulnerability is an integer overflow issue that can cause the Snort Modbus OT preprocessor to enter an infinite while loop. According to the advisory, the vulnerability can be exploited by a remote attacker. The flaw affects all open source Snort project releases earlier than 2.9.19, as well as release 3.1.11.0. For some reason, it's in here again. I'm just going to leave it there. The researchers focused their analysis on Snort OT preprocessor, in particular in Modbus. One, because Modbus is a popular industrial protocol. An integer overflow vulnerability in the Snort Modbus OT preprocessor enables an attacker to remotely send a crafted packet to a vulnerable system, triggering an infinite loop or infinite while loop and creating a denial of service condition. Reads the analysis published by Clarity and that includes technical details about the issue. Cisco addressed a high-severity vulnerability in the Cisco Umbrella virtual appliance tracked to CVE 2022-20773 that could be exploited by an unauthenticated attacker to steal admin credentials remotely. Umbrella is Cisco's cloud-based secure internet gateway platform that provides users with multiple levels of defense against internet-based threats. Umbrella integrates secure web gateway, firewall, DNS layer security, and cloud access security broker functionality to protect systems against threats. The CVE 2022-20773 flaw resides in the key-based SSH authentication mechanism of Cisco Umbrella Virtual Appliance and is due to the presence of a static SSH host key. This vulnerability is due to the presence of a static SSH host key. An attacker could exploit this vulnerability by performing a man-in-the-middle attack on an SSH connection to the Umbrella VA. A successful exploit could allow the attacker to learn the administrator credentials, changing configurations, or to reload the VA, reads the advisory published by Cisco. Security researchers at Checkpoint Research have discovered a critical remote code execution that affects the implementation of the Apple lossless audio codec in Android devices running on Qualcomm and MediaTek chipsets. The ALAC is an audio coding format developed by Apple for lossless data compression of digital music. ALAC was developed in 2004 and Apple open sourced it in 2011. Since then, many third-party vendors used it. Checkpoint Research reported that Qualcomm and MediaTek chipset makers used a vulnerable version of the ALAC code in their audio decoders. The security firm estimated that more than half of all smartphones worldwide are impacted. A remote attacker can trigger the vulnerability by tricking the target device into opening a malformed audio file to execute arbitrary code. The security firm responsibly shared its findings with MediaTek and Qualcomm and helped them to fix it. MediaTek tracked the ALAC flaws as CVE 2021-0674 and CVE 2021-0675, while Qualcomm tracked it as CVE 2021-30351. Both chipset makers addressed the issues in December 2021. CrowdStrike's researchers reported that the Lemon Duck crypto mining botnet is targeting Docker to mine cryptocurrency on Linux systems. The Lemon Duck crypto mining malware was first spotted in June 2019 by researchers from Trend Micro while targeting enterprise networks. At the time of its first discovery, the bot was gaining access to the MS SQL service via brute force attacks and leveraging the Eternal Blue exploit. Later, operators added to the Lemon Duck miner a port scanning module that searches for internet-connected Linux systems listening on the 22 TCP port used for SSH remote login. Then it launches a SSH brute force attack. Another module that was implemented to exploit the SMB Ghost CVE 2020-0796 Windows SMB version 3 client server or remote code execution flaw. In the campaign, spotted by CrowdStrike, the Lemon Duck botnet gains access to exposed Docker APIs and runs a container that fetches a bash script disguised as a ping image. The script is downloaded from the domain, whatever that says, which was observed in another lemon duck attack, or other lemon duck attacks. The core.png file acts as a pivot by setting a Linux cron job inside the container. Next, this cron job downloads another disguise file, a.asp, which is actually a bash file, reads the analysis published by CrowdStrike. The a.asp file is the actual payload in this attack. It takes several steps before downloading and starting a mining operation once it is triggered by a cron job as follows. The bash file, a.asp, performs the following actions. It kills processes based on names of known mining pools, competing crypto miner groups, etc. It kills known daemons, including cronD, SSHD, and syslog, that are killed by grabbing daemon process IDs. It deletes known indicator of compromise file paths to disrupt any existing operation, and it kills known network connections. The bot also disables the Alibaba's cloud monitoring service, which is used to detect malicious activities on cloud instances once the agent is installed on a host or container. In the last stage of the attack chain, the a.asp file downloads and runs xmrig miner, also with its configuration. The analysis of the configuration file used by xmrig revealed the use of the crypto mining proxy pool to hide the wallet address used by the operators. The lemon duck also performs lateral movements by searching for SSH keys on the file system. Rainloop is an open-source, web-based email client used by thousands of organizations, which is affected by a vulnerability tracked to CVE 2022-29360 that can be exploited to steal users' emails. The vulnerability is a stored cross-site scripting issue that impacts Rainloop version 1.16.0, which is the latest version of the software using default configurations. An attacker can simply trigger the vulnerability by sending a specially crafted email to a Rainloop user. Upon opening the email, a hidden JavaScript payload is executed in the browser. An attacker only needs to know the email address of an employee of a targeted organization to hijack a user's session and steal their emails. The vulnerability is due to a logic bug after the sanitation process. Sonar experts have found similar issues in high-profile targets such as Zimbra and WordPress. Sonar initially reported the flaw to Rainloop in November 2021, but the company has yet to receive a response from the development team. The researchers recommend the Rainloop fork Snappy Mail, which is not affected by the vulnerability. Last week, a ransomware attack crippled the government infrastructure of Costa Rica, causing chaos. The county ransomware gang claimed responsibility for the attack, while the Costa Rican government refused to pay ransom. The attack took place early last week. It impacted multiple government services from the Finance Ministry to the Labor Ministry. The initial attack forced the Finance Ministry to shut down for several hours the system responsible for paying of a good part of the country's public employees, which also handles government pension payments. It also has had to grant extensions for tax payments, reads the post published by the Associated Press. Costa Rican businesses fear the ransomware gang could have infiltrated confidential information they provided to the government. The leak of this data could pose a serious risk to these organizations. It's not clear if this attack was politically motivated. While county ransomware gang announced its support for Russia's invasion of the Ukraine and Costa Rica publicly condemned the invasion, who knows? Security researcher Khaled Nassar released a proof of concept code for a new digital signature bypass vulnerability tracked to CVE 2022-21449 with a CVS's score rating of 7.5 in Java. The vulnerability was discovered by ForgeRock researcher Neil Madden, who notified Oracle on November 11, 2021. An unauthenticated attacker with network access via multiple protocols can trigger the issue to compromise Oracle Java SE and Oracle Graal FVM Enterprise Edition. Successful exploitation of this vulnerability can result in unauthorized creation, deletion, or modification access to critical data, or all Oracle all Oracle Java SE Oracle Graal VM Enterprise Edition accessibility data. The flaw impacts the following versions of Java SE and Oracle Graal VM Enterprise Edition: Oracle Java SE 7U331, 8U321, 11.0.14, 17.0.2, 18, Oracle Graal VM Enterprise Edition 20.3.5, 21.3.1, 22.0.0.2. The vulnerability, dubbed Psychic Feat Signatures, resides in Java's implementation of elliptic curve digital signature algorithm. The flaw allows presenting a total blank signature that is accepted as valid by the vulnerable implementation. Successful exploitation of the flaw could permit an attacker to forge signatures and bypass authentication measures put in place. Nassar demonstrated that setting up a malicious TLS server could deceive a client into accepting an invalid signature from the server, effectively allowing the rest of the TLS handshake to continue. Oracle addressed the issue with the release of the April 2022 critical patch update. Organizations that have deployed Java 15, Java 16, Java 17, and Java 18 in production should install the security updates immediately. Telecom company T-Mobile on Friday revealed the Lapsus extortion gang gained access to its networks. The Popular Investigation and journalist Brian Krebs first surmised that the Lapsus gang had breached T-Mobile after he reviewed a copy of the private chat messages between the members of the cybercrime group. The log shows the Lapsus group has access to the network of T-Mobile multiple times in March, or had. The hackers had stolen source code for multiple company projects. The VPN credentials for initial access are said to have been obtained from illicit websites like Russian markets, with the goal of gaining control of T-Mobile employee accounts, ultimately allowing the threat actor to carry out SIM swapping attacks at will. Lapsus leader White Lapsus Jobs looking up the Department of Defense in T-Mobile's internal Atlas system, according to the source Krebs on security. The telecom company says no customer or government information was compromised, despite the images shared in chats show the gang gaining access to the internal Atlas system along to Slack and Bitbucket accounts. The system's access to contain no customer or government information or other similarly sensitive information, and we have no evidence that the intruder was able to obtain anything of value, T-Mobile said. Our systems and processes worked as designed, the intrusion was rapidly shut down and closed off, and the compromised credentials used were rendered obsolete. The gang obtained the VPN credentials for initial access to the target systems from dark web marketplaces, then they used the access to perform SIM swapping attacks. Perhaps to mollify his furious teammates, White changed the subject and told them he'd gained access to T-Mobile's Slack and Bitbucket accounts. He said he'd figure out how to upload files to the virtual machine he had access to at T-Mobile, wrote Krebs. Roughly 12 hours later, White posted a screenshot in their private chart showing his automated script had downloaded more than 30,000 source code lines. Over the last months, the Lapsus gang compromised many prominent companies such as Nvidia, Samsung, Ubisoft, Mercado Libre, Vodafone, Microsoft, Okta, and Globant. In early April, the City of London's police charged 2 of 7 teenagers who were arrested for their alleged role in Lapsus data extortion gang. UK police suspect that a 16-year-old from Oxford is one of the leaders of the popular Lapsus group. We now move on to other security news. The Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, added a VMware privilege escalation flaw tracked to CV 2022-22960 and a Google Chrome type confusion issue tracked to CV 2022-1364 to its Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog. According to a binding operation directive, BOD 2022-01, reducing the risk of known exploited vulnerabilities, FCB agencies have to address the identified vulnerabilities by the due date to protect their networks against attacks exploiting the flaws in the catalog. Of course, they do it also for private companies, or they recommend private companies doing it. The VMware vulnerability tracked to CVE 2022-22960 is a privilege escalation bug that was recently addressed by this virtualization giant. The Google Chrome flaw tracked to CVE 2022-1364 is a type confusion issue that was fixed by Google with the release of Chrome 100.0.4896.127 for Windows, Mac, and Linux. Here's another one from CISA talking about Windows print spooler, tracked to CVE 2022-22718, blah, 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 known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. Everybody's got to fix it. BOD 2201, even private companies. Now, the CVE 2022-22718 flaw is a Windows print spooler elevation of privilege issue that has been rated as high severity and received a CVSS version 3 score of 7.8. The Windows Print Spooler vulnerability was addressed by Microsoft with the release of February 2022 Patch Tuesday security updates, along with 50 other flaws in multiple products. Cybersecurity agencies of the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, ooh, that sounds cool, the United States, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom issued a joint advisory warning of cyber attacks on critical infrastructure conducted by Russia-linked threat actors and criminal cyber threats. The alert warns organizations that Russia's invasion of Ukraine could lead to spillover effect across Europe. Intelligence agencies state that the Russia-linked app groups are exploring options for potential cyber attacks. Cybersecurity agencies urge critical infrastructure network defenders to harden their systems to mitigate potential cyber threats. The joint advisory includes actions defenders can take to secure their information technology and operational technology networks, along with best practices for keeping networks secure and responding to cyber incidents. Actions recommended by the Five Eyes cybersecurity agencies to protect infrastructure against Russian state-sponsored and criminal cyber threats include patch all systems, prioritize patching known exploited vulnerabilities, enforce multi-factor authentication, secure and monitor remote desktop protocol and other risky services like SSH, provide end-user awareness and training. The Pwn2Own Miami 2022 is a hacking contest organized by TrendMicro's Zero-Day initiative that focuses on demonstrating exploits for ICS systems belonging to the following categories: the OPC, UA server, control server, human-machine interface, and data gateway. During the 3 days of competition, 11 participants made 32 attempts of demonstrating their ICS exploits against products for Unified Automation, Iconics, Inductive Automation, Process, Aviva, Triangle Microworks, OPC Foundation, Kepware, and Softing. Participants demonstrated a total of 26 unique zero-day exploits. Only 2 attempts failed, and the other 8 were classified as bug collisions, which means that the white hat hackers successfully demonstrated the ICS exploits, but they were using already known issues. Each bug collision attempt was awarded a payout of $5,000, while remote code execution were awarded $20,000 on average. The payout for DOS ICS exploits was $5,000. The Compute Test Sector 7 team won Master of Pawn for Pwn2Own Miami 2022 and earned a total of $90,000. With that, I say thanks again for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe if you haven't already, and smash the bell if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Don't forget to ride. Farewell.